So hopefully that works.
Yeah.
See if we get everything else working. So I had to start my my first class out in pretty much the same way and saying, usually the first day of class, everybody knows first day of class, you get the syllabus, get everything set up. Luckily, the web was actually working. I'm sorry. See, I've been here all day and I can't even talk. Luckily, the web part's working because that wasn't working for me earlier today. But I had to go into my first class and explain, well, there is a copy of the syllabus. It's online. You're going to get a hard copy probably on Wednesday, but we have no toner in the printer on the second floor of Hill Hall. From what I've heard, basically everybody's kind of in the same boat. Like there's no toner. I don't know if this is like the microchip that they needed in the cars or something, but for some reason we can't print anything out. So you will get a syllabus. There is one online that is done through electronic means, but even that one's a little bit wrong because once they re-updated the topics or re-updated everything on my webpage, turns out now I have to go back once again and make sure that they're all correct after doing that all summer. So it's a fun way to start the semester, let me tell you. I will do a couple of things. Today, just to get us on track and get us going. The first thing that I'm going to do, obviously, is read through the roster, read through the roll. Now, this class is going to be a little bit interesting. There are, I think, 3, maybe 4 students who are actually enrolled in the class, but they are basically doing distance learning this semester. 2 of them actually have internships in other states, and they need this class. They want to stay on track to graduate. So I'm working with a couple of people, and so you guys help me out on this. You got to remember, I always have to remember to turn on the streaming and the recording so that they can either show up for class or what we'll basically be doing is recording the class, and I'll be uploading the lectures and everything for them as well. So it's kind of teaching a little bit of hybrid. Using some of those lessons that we were forced to learn during, the COVID semesters. But it should work out well, hopefully. And, everybody will get what they need from the class. Let me go ahead and call the roll here. Those of you who don't know me, which, some of you may not have had in class, I am Dr. Petrozinski. My last name is insane. It looks insane. It sounds insane. I agree with that. First of all, I will tell you right now, no one here ever has to say the word Petrozinski. Everybody on this campus simply calls me Dr. P. So Dr. P is fine. And I say that as a precursor to calling roll because my standard spiel is I'm really bad at calling or pronouncing people's names as I see them written. And I should feel bad about that. After teaching as long as I have, I should be able to read people's names. Let me tell you, when your last name is Petrozinski, no one ever gets it right. So I don't feel bad if I mispronounce other people's names. So it works well there. Also, it's really helpful when you have like solicitors call your phone and they're like, "Is Mr. Petrozinski there?" Nope, sorry, no one's here by that name. Click. So if I mispronounce your name, I apologize in advance. Please let me know, and I'll probably mess it up for the first couple of classes. But let me know, and I will change and adjust in that way. First person everybody knows here, Andy, Isaiah Baker, James Barentine, Michael Baumgartner, Dewey Fletcher, Kemi Heineman. Heineman. Pardon? Okay, that works. Just make that little change right here so that I'll. Jasmine, she's here, but she's online. Sarah, yep. Rebecca Sutton, and Nathan Ventura. I said some of those people are already online. Although that camera's not working, I gotta figure out what's wrong. So I'm streaming on my laptop. So those people who are watching online are actually going to see me walking around and doing random things until I can get everything fixed in this room, or simply just move us to a better room. Because I don't think I've ever taught in this room in all the time that I've taught here. It's not a very comfortable room. It smells, and the air conditioner doesn't work. So I'm gonna try. As cheery thing was probably one would think that I should get a room that I want to teach in, right? That should be how it works. All right, we've already fathomed, this is Shakespeare 315. I'm probably not going to keep you very long today. I do want to go over some of the requisite stuff that is involved in the syllabus. More so because it is good information to know, but it's also when the general counsel of the department asks, "Hey, did you go through the stuff that you need to do in the first day?" You have to be able to say, "Yes, you did." I will point out that this class is set up with a web component. It is technically a 30% online class. We on campus will rarely use that. It's set up as a 30% online class for a couple of reasons. One of the biggest ones is if an emergency happens and I can't be here, I can put information up online and we don't have to lose classes. Those of you who have had class before with me know that I have a daughter with a chronic illness. And as I tell all of our students, we love our students here, but I love my family more. And if she needs to go to the hospital for a treatment, I might put the class online and say, "Hey, I won't be there because I'll be at the hospital." That's the nice part about that. The other thing is it allows us to do things like turn things in electronically, be able to make copies of things for you and be able to access them very easily. What's nice is, for those of you who, if you get sick, if you can't make it to class, we will be doing this. I will be doing this live streaming / recording thing. So you can actually never miss a class, which is hopefully, we will do anyway, but it's got at least a little bit of benefit in that way. Also, one of the other really nice things about this is I do use, especially after teaching in the pandemic, I do use a lot of PowerPoint slides during my lectures, and I'll explain this when I have the first one as well. 95% of the time, I use slides to keep me on task because otherwise I'll just keep talking and randomly move all over the place. However, one of the things that I do is I do make my PowerPoint presentations available to my students. It is better to listen to what I'm saying and have discussion than it is to try and spend the entire time writing down what's on the PowerPoint. It's also shown to be ineffective to take your cameras out and take little pictures of the PowerPoint slides. My 101E class was doing that this morning. I'm like, that's not the best way to learn information. You should be writing it down. But more importantly, you should be focusing on what's being said. Excuse me. So I do want to just look at a couple of things that's included for this class. First of all, and this isn't true anymore, when they updated it, they didn't change my office hours. A couple of things I will point out, though. My office is in 233 Hill Hall. I'm sure most of you know where my office is. Unfortunately, this semester, and maybe not unfortunately for the students, I started out this semester going into the summer really all the way up until Thursday morning with a really, really good schedule. I had some online classes. I was only going to be teaching in the morning or in the afternoons, not in the mornings. And then that all changed when, we had this huge influx of freshmen come in, and we had to open up 4 more sections of English 101. Well, I had to do some shell game for the sections. And as chair, guess who gets to teach the sections that were open at the end of the week? So instead, it says my office hours are virtual. But the simple fact is I am basically going to be on campus Monday through Thursday, starting at about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I won't leave until about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you need to see me, I do teach throughout that, but if you need to see me, chances are I'll be in my office. If you want to come talk, if you just want to stop by, if you have a question about something, first of all, I encourage people to do that. One, because sitting in your office when no one's showing up, it gets really boring, especially at the first part of the semester when you're not grading anything. So I do encourage students to come show up. And you'll see the new office hours when you get the syllabus, but really, like I said, I'll be there basically all day, every day. except for Fridays. My phone number is also listed up there, as well as my email address. I tell everyone the best way to get in touch with me is through my email address. Probably like most of you or all of you, I spend more time answering email on my phone than I actually do on my computer. So if you email me, expect a response. And we in the English department in the humanities, the College of Arts and Humanities, have basically said, look, we'll try to respond to everybody back within 24 hours. So if you don't get something back from me within 24 hours, what I ask people is simply email it again. I'm not going to get offended if you're like, hey, did you get that last email? I get a lot of email. So if I miss it, it's easier for you to send it a second time. My phone number is up there as well. I used to joke that we had this really antiquated voicemail system. And I used to joke that I didn't get voicemail, or it was really hard to get our voicemail. So don't call my phone because usually it won't work. And then we got a new system that actually sends the voicemail to my email. So you can call, and if you get the voicemail, I will get it. But again, the easiest way to contact me is through that email address. And I like I said, it'll take me about 24 hours to get back to you, probably less. Most of the time, if I'm sitting there and I have my phone on me and it buzzes and there's an email, I try to respond to it right away. Otherwise, I might forget. So that's the good news. You'll get some confirmation back from me. As far as the syllabus goes, first off, I want to point out, you'll notice, and you'll probably at the bookstore, I'm sure Andy will tell you that there's no book for this class listed in the bookstore. There's a reason for that. I'm teaching Shakespeare. Everything in Shakespeare is available can be available very inexpensively or for free. So if you have a pretty good version of all of Shakespeare's collective works, use it. If you want to go out to a used bookstore and find dollar copies of the plays that you're using because you want a hard copy, that's fine. Online, one of the things that you will notice, and of course I already went back, but one of the things that you will notice is I made electronic links to every single one of all the sonnets and all the plays that we'll be doing. So essentially, you don't have to buy a book for this class. I know that's good news because I know how expensive books are. Are you counting how many plays are up there?
I'm counting how many.
I just saw you counting, so I got. If you want to know, well, hey, what would you recommend? You can email me. I'll let you know what edition or version I'll recommend. These are all linked to the MIT version, which also have they have scene, line, and or act, scene, and line numbers, so they're able to be quoted. We're able to reference them. As I said, my goal is to try to make this as easy as possible. Technically, this is considered an open learning resource class, so you don't have to pay for anything. That's why you won't find anything at the bookstore, because I remember how expensive the books are, and they just get more and more expensive. So it's easier to just do it that way. As we get through here, the syllabus is basically standard. I do ask you to read through it, and we'll go through that in a second. I just want to go through some of the policies that this university has for this semester. First of all, and I'm sure as you all look around, you can tell we are mask free here at State. They're not required. If you would like to wear a mask, it's absolutely up to you. No one's going to judge you either way. I will tell you, as the person standing in front of the room, not having to wear masks is the most amazing thing in the world again, because it is really difficult to be an instructor and trying to figure out if your students understand what's going on, and all you see are their eyes. You can't tell what their expressions are. So as you're lecturing, you're like, you constantly have to ask, do you get it? You know what I'm saying? Now with I can see faces, that's at least a little bit different. So this one actually, like I said, it reverted to my old syllabus. So it's like, you have to wear masks. No, you don't. That's the good news. However, we do ask you to, and I think the easiest way to think about this is when you're on campus or coming to campus, use common sense. In other words, if you are feeling sick, if you've tested positive, and there are cases of people who have tested positive, I got to go to class. You don't want to infect everybody. Nobody here wants to be infected. So use common sense, wash your hands, do everything that we've been doing for the last 2 years. But if you don't feel well, stay home. I'm not going to, I'll work with anybody. Again, the nice part about being able to stream and record is if someone, does come down with COVID and they contact me, I could say, hey, the good news is you can sit at home in your couch or your bed and listen to us talk and actually chime in because, well, not now because it's on my laptop, but once the speakers are in here, I'll be able to even hear you. So that's the good news. And like I said, for those of us who have been teaching for a while, is really important. And I think it gets us back to, I'm excited about this semester just because it's the first semester we're 100% here on campus. I didn't sign up to teach into an empty room, a camera in an empty room like we did one semester. So I'm sure you didn't want to take college classes that way either. The other thing as far as the COVID rules and responsibilities go, talked about staying home, feel well. If you are positive, you find out that you are positive for COVID, the syllabus will have a name and number. It's Mr. Davenport. He is our main person on campus for dealing with COVID. And so he's basically responsible for any kind of contact tracing that we do. So starting Wednesday, I'll actually even have to take attendance and a sign-in sheet, or not so much a sign-in sheet, but at least where everybody is sitting. So if somebody comes out positive, we can say, okay, we got to contact this group of people. So that is one of the things that we are asking is if you are positive, that you do talk to Mr. Davenport and let him know. This is a course. The reason why I really like being able to be back face-to-face is because this, like most of my courses, is a course that requires discussion and participation. Very rarely will I stand up here for an hour and 15 minutes and lecture at you. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I want to hear, what are your insights in the stuff that we've been talking about. This basically means you need to become prepared for class. So if, I say, hey, look, we're going to read the first two acts of Henry III or Richard III and talk about it on Wednesday, then I expect that you will have read those first two acts and are ready to go and talk about them. So the participation here kind of goes both ways. I will be lecturing sometimes. I say that knowing that Wednesday I'll be doing mostly lecturing. But at the same time, you need to be prepared and have readings done. So that's the good news. I do have the writing blogs or the writing information that's up here. And really, and I don't want to use writing as a punishment or say writing as a punishment. But if we are lacking in participation, I might ask you to do some response papers. I'll ask a question and say, hey, by next class, I want you to answer this question. And that's mainly so that if people aren't participating, I can say, hey, what'd you write? What did you write on your paper? And you could just read it and we can start discussion from there. However, the good news is I don't necessarily have to do that. So again, the nice part about being up here is if the class is having a discussion, we're going to, keep having that discussion. I work with what I call the speed of the class. In other words, I'm not going to be like, oh no, we need to finish we need to finish scene 4, Act 4 by this Thursday, but we're having a great conversation on Act 3. I'm not going to stop the discussion just to speed up. Things will change, and this is one of the biggest things about my syllabus. Things might get shifted around. I'll let you know where we're at. But basically, it'll be quite obvious when we're reading which play. There's usually a quiz at the end of each one of the plays. So when that's over, we start the next play. It's really kind of that simple. I told you I'm using this more for my own, what we need to do than anything else. And I already skipped where I wanted to go. One of the things that you'll notice on the syllabus is we do have several different ways of working with Shakespeare this semester. As far as evaluation goes, we will have some quizzes. Everyone in here will be responsible for really kind of two presentations. One is a sonnet presentation. We could spend the entire 16 weeks just looking at the sonnets. We don't have the luxury of that time of doing that. So what I basically do is I'll talk about a couple of them, and then throughout the first half of the semester, I'll ask you guys to come up here and talk about the sonnets, what you learned from them, what your evaluation of them was, how you critique them. And so part of it will be, you coming up here and talking about that. We'll also do kind of a research presentation. We have, enough people here. We might do this with a partner. It'll depend if I'll make that consideration before Wednesday. But basically what I also do is we'll do a presentation dealing with some of the background stuff you'll need to know about Shakespeare. I make sure it's the fun stuff that you might want to talk about. So you'll be responsible for maybe 10, 15 minutes of going through and discussing information about the play that we would get historically, that we would get through research. I kind of turn it over to you guys so that you get the experience of being able to do some of that stuff yourself. I'm always there to help. But we do those kind of those presentations. There is a midterm essay and a final research project, but I'm not going to get too much into those today. But I do want you to realize that one of the things that I've tried to build into this class is I realize everyone here has a different forte. And so my goal is to, first of all, help you find that, what you're good at, and then use that to do a good job in this class and learn something about Shakespeare. So that's, there are a couple of different ideas, but they're, pretty easy to understand. I talked about the distance learning. The other thing that I will talk about is this. I do take attendance in my classes. For those people who are doing it online, they'll have to, I'll be able to take their attendance as well. And there's a couple of reasons why I do that. If people stop showing up, if people aren't talking, and then we lose talking, then we lose participation, and the class kind of drags. And so if everybody's here, everybody's working, it does make for a much more enjoyable class. My attendance policy is basically really easy to understand. I give you a week's worth of absences for free. In other words, we meet twice a week, so you have 2 absences that I don't have to know why you're absent. It's up to you. If you're, well, it's a 4 o'clock class. I'm like, you slept in, but that worked at 9 o'clock. It didn't work. That shouldn't work at 4 o'clock. Although my 8-year-old woke up at 1 o'clock this afternoon after sleeping 12 hours. So it could happen, I guess. But if you're sick, if you're not feeling well, if there's just some reason, there's an emergency that happens, a doctor's appointment. If it's on those first 2 absences, it's not going to affect your grade at all. It's not going to be counted against you. So you don't have to worry about it. So I told my 9 o'clock class this morning, if you went up to go watch the WVU game and spent Sunday night drinking a little too much, you didn't make it back down for class, I won't judge you. Well, I will, because I'm not a WVU fan, but I won't judge you about doing that if it's within those first 2 weeks. After that, however, you will get penalties will start to accrue. You can fail the class for missing too many classes. But I understand emergencies happen. As I said, I've been on that side of the room. So I'm willing to work with people if something comes up. Biggest thing I ask for you is to communicate. And I'll give you a really good example of this. It didn't happen to me. Those of you who know Dr. BP, who I'm also married to, this happened to her while we were at grad school. She was teaching an English 101 class, and she probably tells the story better than I did. But she had a student in there. She was 18 years old. Went off to college. Her only child went off to college for the first time. Her mother, unfortunately, had passed away when she was young, so it was just her and her dad. She went to college, and her dad went, "Oh my God, this is the first time in 18 years that I'm free to do what I want to do," and went to go visit his friend in Arizona, where he had a heart attack and died. So 18 years old, college the first time. Now you also have to fly to Arizona, and set funeral things up for your father. She missed a week's worth of class doing that, right? So there's your 2 days. Upon the first day she was going to come back to class, she got on her bicycle, started driving to class, and got T-boned by an SUV crossing the street. ended up in the hospital, I think, with a broken leg and a broken arm. She didn't fail the class because she had missed another 2 weeks worth of class in the hospital. She was talked to Dr. BP. She, really, the communications what got her through the class and actually got her an A in the class, and still she's graduated and with honors. So as long as you talk to us, that's fine. It also brings up my other word of warning that I always tell students about that story, and that is if something happens to you and you are on a morphine drip at the hospital, do not try to write a paper on a laptop to turn in, because it just that paper went all. I still have a copy of it someplace, but one point she starts talking about the butterflies on the ceiling and the people at her window. She was on the 3rd floor of the hospital, so I don't think there was anybody at the window. But it was an interesting subject in 101. But the key there is just keep me informed. Those who had me in class before know I'm very easy to work with. If something comes up, we'll figure out a solution to what's going on. But if you don't tell me and you just disappear and you show up 3 weeks later and be like, oh no, I just couldn't do X, Y, or Z, that becomes a problem. As far as other things that we need to go that is included in the syllabus, I do also like to point out the fact that here at State, we do have excellent student services. This includes accommodations for students. And I always tell students, if you are one of those people who in elementary and high school had a 501 or an IEP, you've been diagnosed with ADHD or anything like that, you can still get those types of accommodations here at State. We don't do it the same way with having to go to IEP meetings. What you'll do is talk to Michael Casey, who's over there in the counseling services, and he'll work with you and us to make sure you get those things. This is one of those things where I always also tell students, it's not necessarily free. You've already paid for it. It's part of your tuition. So if you think even that you might have been or could be diagnosed with ADHD, he's the man to go see. He will help you out, make sure that you get those accommodations. Especially in my classes, and I would say in my department, because I would yell at them if they did this, we don't discriminate for things that if you have an accommodation, we will work with you. As a matter of fact, I think we've got some in the English department, some of the people who work most with people for accommodations than other places. The other part that, again, that legalese that we usually have to get through is that we do have a very strict, we follow our Title IX policy very strictly here. Title IX is the sexual harassment policy. As a state employee, all faculty and staff on this campus are what we call mandatory reporters. So in other words, I put it, if we see something, we will say something. If you come to us and tell us something, we will work to get it to the next level so that everyone is protected. I will tell you, I take that seriously, being in classrooms where at one point, there was a restraining order between 2 students who were in the same class. And we had to figure out how we were going to educate both of them because they couldn't be in the same room with each other. I unfortunately also had a student who was murdered during the semester by her partner. So I take it very seriously if something goes, and I actually had to testify for that. That was not a fun day. So I take it very seriously, and if you come up and you tell me something, I will, help you out, take it to the next level. All right, getting phone calls from Dr. BP. She knows I'm teaching. She's not supposed to call me. All right. As far as the syllabus goes, what you're going to notice the syllabus, as the way I set it up right now, is I set it up by week. And then Monday and Wednesday, it was just easier to do this way. As I said, the key to remember is we will be working on the plays one after the other. If they're plays at the most, if you're listening to a dramatic performance of the play, the longest Shakespeare play is Hamlet. And it takes if you do the entire play dramatically, it takes about 4.5 to 5 hours to listen to. Other than that, most plays can be read within 3 to 4 hours. So if you schedule your time wisely, there's not a lot of reading to do in this class. But it is intense. It is difficult. If you've never had an experience of reading Shakespeare, it can be difficult to understand at the beginning. The good news is we'll take it slow here. We'll start out slow. We'll get everybody accustomed to it, and we'll speed up from there. I will, we'll always know what's going on as far as the course calendar goes. You'll know things like, okay, when your presentations are. Not only will you'll get handwritten copies, but they'll normally pop up on the electronic version of this class as well. So it's one of those. As long as you stay with the readings, you should be fine. Any questions about the syllabus or anything? We'll get into a little bit more detail on Wednesday, especially as we start going through some of the things that you'll be required to do for class. What I really wanted to do, though, is, if there's no questions, I know most of you had some of you in class. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, and I was going to do some brief introductions here. Before we get there, though, I will tell you basically my pedagogical stance on teaching Shakespeare. This is the class that I was hired here to teach. It's the class that I wrote my dissertation on. Is about how to teach early modern literature to modern students. And my approach to the class is, if you haven't gathered now, is a lot of participation and discussion. But I am, if you've taken Dr. McConnell's literary theory class yet, sorry, Andy. I am that most people would consider more of a new historicist / cultural Marxist. In other words, I believe that literature is not written in a vacuum. Shakespeare, while he's writing, and I'll talk about this on Wednesday in detail, is writing at a time that is probably one of the most turbulent times ever in England. We can't assume that none of that affected him while he was writing. And so when I teach Shakespeare, I do spend a lot of time talking about other things that are going on in England while Shakespeare is writing, because the joke among the English professors is, we killed off the author many years ago. Authorial intent isn't something that we really incite. In other words, do we understand what Shakespeare is doing? Well, unless anybody here has a TARDIS, we can't go back and actually ask him. And if we do ask him, he may not understand what's going on either, because an author is influenced by what's going on, sometimes unconscious or subconsciously. And so we can use things like Shakespeare's plays and talk about how other things might have affected it, including things that are going on in the government. I'm actually working on a paper right now where I'm looking at court cases that were going on during Elizabethan England and talking about how some of those rulings might have affected what Shakespeare's doing. And so all of those things are important. The history is important. The culture is important. And so we will work through in this class understanding that as well. As far as who I am, I already told you my name. And if you haven't guessed by now, usually a lot of people from West Virginia are able to peg this one really easily. I am not from West Virginia. Not originally from West Virginia at all. Many people say, or say they figure that out because of my accent. I will argue that I do not have an accent. Unless I get closer and closer to Chicago, then the Chicago accent comes out. Or if I visited recently, you'll notice two things. My Chicago accent might come out, and I'll start talking really fast. Because I am from a suburb of Chicago. And so when I go visit, my grandma had one of the worst Chicago accents you can imagine. But when I go back, sometimes we revert back to some of those things. I actually grew up about 30 miles southwest of Chicago in a suburb called Bolingbrook, which was named after a Shakespeare character, ironically. And so, I tell people I'm a huge Chicago sports fan. So football season starting, I will be watching every Bears game that I can. But as I said, hey, when you are the 1985 Bears is the team that kind of influenced you as a child, you have no choice but to be a Bears fan. Then in the 90s, I pride myself on letting you know, I actually watched Michael Jordan play several games, playoffs and stuff like that. So big Chicago sports fan. My undergraduate degree is actually from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. So I'm also a big Badger fan, Big Ten fan. So that's why, people are like the Mountaineers here. And I'm like, I have never seen a single Mountaineers football game. And living here 16 years, I've never seen a single game. But as an undergraduate, and I tell people this mainly to help put some minds at ease. I think besides having a family, which more and more people are having as they come before they come here, I did everything you could possibly do as an undergraduate. I played Division I football. I was in a fraternity. I switched my major. I was originally in computer science and then hit calculus 222 or 223 and went, I'm really good at English. So I've changed my major. I've worked part-time. I've worked full-time. So I understand being on that side of the room pretty much as an undergraduate. From there, I went on to get my master's degree at Eastern Illinois University. And people told me when I was going to move here to West Virginia that it was going to be a culture shock moving from the Midwest out here. And I tried to explain to them this wasn't as much of a culture shock as going to school in Madison, Wisconsin, where there's 40,000 undergraduates. Anything you could possibly ever want to do. I graduated in 4.5 years from my undergraduate, and that included changing my major. But man, there's also lots of fun things to do in Madison, so it may have taken a little longer. When I went to Eastern Illinois, it's literally cornfield school, cornfield. That was culture shock. So I got my master's degree as quickly as I possibly could. I actually finished it in 1.5 years, and got my PhD from Illinois State University, where I have a PhD in English studies and a specialization in early modern literature. The nice part about the English studies degree is I actually had to study writing and composition, pedagogy, language, and literature in order to get my degree. So kind of turned ourselves into jacks of all trade, which meant we all got jobs, which was the important part. But the love of what and the reason why I do is basically this class. Right? I mean, I came here to teach Shakespeare. When I was hired, there was actually 2 Shakespeare classes. The first thing I had to do was combine them into one class, which sucks for the person who has to teach it. But it's why I'm here. Since then, it's been, I think I'm starting my 16th or 17th year here. I've honestly forgot. The plaque in my office has 15 years, and I got it last year, so I guess it's the 16th year. I always joke and tell people when I started here at State, I tell everybody that I always thought this was going to be my first job. But then, this place kind of gets its hooks in you. And as I was explaining to my one-on-one class this morning, it's also, most faculty who are here teaching are doing it because we're actually doing it because you're doing something. You go to a Research One institution to teach, a lot of those students are just getting a degree so they can take over mom and dad's business. Here, you're actually working on helping change people's lives. So a lot of the faculty here, and I would include myself here in that as well, that's what we do. As you probably know, is also it kind of helps that my wife got a job here about 2 years after I did. So when you get 2 academics in the same place in the same department, it's kind of, you're embedded. People are going to stay there simply because it's hard to get jobs in academia, especially at the same university. So been here since, I think it's 2006, 2005, 2006, somewhere around there. And I'm currently, as you all know, as I already said, the chair of the English department. I'm also the faculty representative to the Board of Governors. And if you're in the education department, I have found out that I have gotten the name the Fixer because they all come to me instead of the education department if there's a problem. I think Andy will attest to that as well. So I do tell students, though, if you're having a problem, if you're having an issue, please feel free to come stop in my office and I'll help you work through it. My door is always open. Last thing I want to do is have, so I can learn a little bit more about you guys, have you guys introduce who you are. But before I do that, I'm going to stop the online feed because they're not going to be able to see or hear you anyway. And we'll get to know them in a little different way. So if you're online, if you have any questions, just feel free to email them to me.